A fiery orange sun dipped below the rugged horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty main street of Williams, Arizona Territory, when Katherine Dawson first laid eyes on the man who would change her life forever. The year was 1885, and Katherine, Kate, to those who knew her well, had just completed her first week as the town's new schoolteacher. Her cheeks were still flushed from the day's lessons as she gathered her papers, the schoolhouse empty save for the whispers of the day's recitations still lingering in the air. The creak of the schoolhouse door made her look up. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the golden sunset, hat in hand, boots dusty from the trail. "Miss Dawson?" His voice was deep, with a slight drawl that spoke of Texas origins. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Kate straightened her back, tucking a loose strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. "Not at all, Mr. Owen Daniels." He stepped into the light, revealing a weathered face bronzed by years under the western sun. His eyes were a striking blue, clear as the Arizona sky, and they held hers with an intensity that made her heartbeat quicken. "I'm the foreman at the Running D Ranch, just outside town. What can I do for you, Mr. Daniels?" Kate asked, conscious of the late hour and her reputation as William's newest resident. A young, unmarried woman of 22 had to be careful about appearances, especially a schoolteacher expected to be the moral compass of the community. Owen Daniels twisted his hat in his hands, revealing a surprising hint of nervousness beneath his rugged exterior. "It's about my brother's children. Their mother passed last winter from consumption, and they've been staying with me at the ranch. The boy's 8, the girl's 6. They need schooling, proper schooling." Kate's heart softened. "Of course, Mr. Daniels, all children are welcome in my classroom. Thing is, Miss Dawson," he continued, "they're a bit wild. Been on the ranch their whole lives, never had much formal learning." A smile tugged at Kate's lips. "I didn't come west expecting docile city children, Mr. Daniels. I can handle a bit of wildness." For the first time, Owen smiled, and the transformation of his face was remarkable. The stern lines softened, and Kate saw a glimpse of the man beneath the hardened cowboy exterior. "I appreciate that, Miss Dawson. They'll be here Monday morning." He turned to leave but paused at the door. "And just so you know, folks around here call me Owen. Mr. Daniels makes me look around for my father." Kate nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the Arizona heat. "Then I shall see you and your niece and nephew on Monday. Owen." The way his name felt on her lips lingered long after he'd gone, as Kate gathered her belongings and prepared for the walk to her modest boarding house room. She told herself the flutter in her stomach was merely anticipation about her new pupils. But even as she thought it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. Kate had come to Williams 3 months after the railroad had connected the small settlement to the rest of the territory. The town was growing, situated as it was near the majestic San Francisco peaks and en route to the Grand Canyon. It boasted a general store, 2 saloons, a small church, a doctor's office, and now finally a proper school. When Kate had answered the advertisement in Ascent, Louis newspaper seeking a qualified teacher willing to relocate to the Arizona Territory, she'd done so with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Her father, a respected professor back east, had been appalled. "Katherine, you're throwing away your education and prospects on a wild frontier fantasy," he'd admonished. Her mother had simply wept, certain she'd never see her only daughter again, but Kate had been determined. At 22, she'd grown weary of the structured, predictable life laid out before her. The daughter of academics was expected to marry a suitable professional man, settle in a comfortable home, and produce well-behaved children. The West represented freedom, adventure, and the chance to make a difference in a place where education was a precious commodity. Now, as she walked the dusty street toward Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, Kate wondered if she'd glimpsed another kind of adventure altogether in the blue eyes of Owen Daniels. Monday morning arrived with the clarity unique to the high desert. Kate had spent Sunday preparing lessons suitable for children of various ages and abilities. Knowing her classroom would contain students ranging from barely school age to teenagers, whose education had been interrupted by the necessities of frontier life. As the children began filing into the one-room schoolhouse, Kate greeted each one with a warm smile. There were 12 in all, a respectable number for a town the size of Williams. Among the last to enter were 2 children who could only be Owen's niece and nephew. The boy, tall for his 8 years, had the same striking blue eyes as his uncle. The girl, a tiny thing with golden braids, clutched her brother's hand with obvious apprehension. Behind them, filling the doorway with his broad shoulders, stood Owen. "Miss Dawson," he said with a nod, removing his hat. "These are the hellions I warned you about, Samuel and Elizabeth Daniels." "Uncle Owen," the boy protested, clearly embarrassed. Kate bit back a smile. "Welcome, Samuel and Elizabeth. I'm very pleased to meet you both." The girl Elizabeth peered up at Kate with solemn eyes. "Can I sit by the window? Pa always said I'm like a wildflower, need lots of sunshine." Something twisted in Kate's heart at the innocent request. "Of course you can, Elizabeth. The sunshine seat is yours." Samuel shuffled his feet. "I brought my own books. Been reading since I was 5. "That's wonderful," Kate replied. "I'm sure you'll be a great help to some of our younger students." Owen placed a large hand on each child's shoulder. "You mind Miss Dawson now, you hear? Learn something useful." "Yes, Uncle Owen," they chorused. He looked up at Kate, and that same jolt of connection passed between them. "I'll be by at 3 to collect them, unless you'd rather I sent one of the hands." "No, that won't be necessary," Kate replied, perhaps too quickly. "I'd like to speak with you about their progress anyway." Owen nodded, a half-smile playing at the corner of his mouth. 3 o'clock then." The day passed in a whirlwind of lessons, recitations, and the inevitable minor crises that arose when managing a dozen children of varying ages and temperaments. Kate discovered that Samuel was indeed an advanced reader, but struggled with arithmetic, while Elizabeth had a natural aptitude for numbers, but was shy about reading aloud. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, Kate found herself glancing more frequently at the clock on the wall. At precisely 3 o'clock, the door opened and Owen stepped inside, hat in hand. The children were engaged in copying passages from their readers, and the sight of a dozen bent heads, pencils scratching on paper, brought a smile to the cowboy's face. "Seems peaceful enough," he remarked quietly to Kate. "Did they behave themselves?" "They were wonderful," Kate assured him. "Elizabeth has a remarkable mind for figures, and Samuel's reading abilities are impressive for his age." Pride softened Owen's weathered features. "Their mother, my sister-in-law, was educated back east before she married my brother. She made sure they had books, even when they didn't have much else." "And their father?" Kate asked gently. Owen's expression clouded. "My brother James was killed in a range dispute 3 years ago. Shot in the back by a rustler. Elizabeth barely remembers him. Samuel remembers too much." "I'm so sorry," Kate murmured, understanding now the shadows she'd seen in the boy's eyes. Owen nodded, accepting her sympathy with quiet dignity. "They're good kids, just need some stability." "A woman's influence." He cleared his throat. "Which brings me to ask Miss Dawson, the children have taken to you. Would you consider coming out to the ranch this Sunday? For dinner, the children could show you around, and my cook makes a mighty fine apple pie." The invitation caught Kate by surprise. That would be lovely, but..." She hesitated, thinking of the town gossips who would surely take notice if the new schoolteacher began visiting a bachelor's ranch. Reading her thoughts, Owen added quickly, "Mrs. Wilkins, our housekeeper, will be there, of course, and I can arrange for Reverend Porter and his wife to join us, if that would make you more comfortable." The consideration touched Kate deeply. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Daniels. I trust your intentions are honorable." She smiled to soften her formal words. "And I would very much like to see where Samuel and Elizabeth live." "Uncle Owen." Elizabeth's voice broke into their conversation as she bounded up, finished with her assignment. Did Miss Dawson tell you I can do sums in my head, all the way to 20? Owen scooped the little girl up in one strong arm. Is that so? Well, you'll have to be in charge of counting the cattle from now on. Elizabeth giggled, a sound so pure and joyful that it made Kate's heart swell. Samuel approached more cautiously, but even he couldn't hide his pleasure when Owen ruffled his hair with obvious affection. Ready to head home, partner? Owen asked the boy, who nodded. As they prepared to leave, Owen turned back to Kate. Sunday, then, around noon. I'll send a wagon for you. Sunday, Kate confirmed, already looking forward to it more than was probably proper. The week passed with an agonizing slowness. Kate threw herself into her teaching, determined to provide her pupils with the education they deserved, despite the limited resources available to her. The town council had provided basic readers and slates, but Kate supplemented these with books from her own collection, sharing stories of far-off places and historical events that widened the children's horizons beyond the Arizona territory. Samuel and Elizabeth continued to blossom under her attention. By Friday, Elizabeth was reading simple sentences aloud, beaming with pride as she did so, while Samuel had mastered multiplication tables through 6. Owen appeared faithfully each afternoon to collect them, and each day, Kate found herself looking forward to those brief exchanges more and more. When Sunday finally arrived, Kate dressed with particular care in her best blue calico dress, with a matching ribbon threaded through her dark hair. Mrs. Henderson, her landlady, raised a knowing eyebrow at Kate's attentions to her appearance but merely commented, "The Daniels Ranch is one of the most prosperous in the county. Owen Daniels is well respected hereabouts." "It's merely a social call," Kate insisted, cheeks warming. "For the children's sake." Mrs. Henderson's smile was indulgent. "Of course it is, dear." True to his word, Owen sent a wagon at precisely 11:30. To Kate's surprise, it was driven by Samuel, with Owen beside him giving quiet instructions and Elizabeth bouncing excitedly on the seat. "Miss Dawson," the little girl called out, "we came to fetch you ourselves." Owen jumped down to help Kate up into the wagon. His hand was warm and calloused as it enveloped hers, and he held on perhaps a moment longer than strictly necessary. "You look lovely, Miss Dawson," he said quietly, for her ears alone. "Thank you," she replied, equally soft. "And please call me Katherine, or Kate if you prefer." His eyes crinkled at the corners. "Kate," he said, as if testing the name on his tongue and finding it to his liking. The journey to the Running D Ranch took just over 30 minutes, following a well-maintained road that wound through pine-studded hills. As they traveled, Elizabeth chattered about the ranch, the horses, and her pet chicken named Penny. Samuel contributed occasional corrections to his sister's exuberant narrative, while Owen kept a watchful eye on the boys' handling of the team, offering guidance with the patience of a born teacher. Kate found herself studying Owen's profile against the brilliant blue Arizona sky. In the week since they'd first met, she'd gathered bits and pieces about him from town gossip. Owen Daniels had come to Arizona with his brother James 10 years earlier, when the territory was even wilder than it was now. They'd built the Running D from nothing, surviving Apache raids, drought, and the lawlessness that had characterized the early days of settlement. When James was killed, Owen had not only taken over the ranch's operations, but had welcomed his brother's widow and children into his home. After Sarah Daniels succumbed to consumption the previous winter, Owen had become the children's sole guardian, a responsibility he bore with unwavering commitment. "There it is." Elizabeth's excited voice pulled Kate from her thoughts. "Our ranch." The Running D spread out before them, a picture of frontier prosperity. A substantial 2-story house built of local stone and timber stood as the centerpiece, surrounded by well-constructed barns, corrals, and outbuildings. Several cowboys moved about the property, tending to horses and cattle. The setting, with the San Francisco peaks rising majestically in the background, took Kate's breath away. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. Owen's expression was a mixture of pride and something else, perhaps a touch of wistfulness. "It's been a lot of work, but worth every drop of sweat. James and I had a dream when we came here. Some days I can hardly believe we made it real." Samuel guided the wagon to a stop before the main house, and Owen helped Kate down, his hands strong and steady at her waist. The front door opened, and a plump woman with iron gray hair stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. "About time you got back," she called out. "That roast won't wait forever." "Mrs. Wilkins, our housekeeper and taskmaster," Owen introduced with a wink. "Mrs. Wilkins, this is Miss Katherine Dawson, the children's teacher." The older woman's shrewd eyes assessed Kate from head to toe. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, for she broke into a warm smile. "Welcome to the Running D, Miss Dawson. The children have talked of nothing else but you all week." "Not just the children," Samuel muttered, earning a sharp look from his uncle that made the boy duck his head to hide a grin. Lunch was served in a spacious dining room, adorned with a mixture of frontier practicality and surprising touches of refinement. The table was set with good china, and fresh wildflowers brightened the center. Mrs. Wilkins' cooking proved exceptional tender roast beef, vegetables from the ranch's kitchen garden, fresh baked bread, and, as promised, a delicious apple pie for dessert. Throughout the meal, Kate observed the easy affection between Owen and the children. They were clearly comfortable in his presence, teasing him and sharing small jokes that spoke of a solid family bond. For his part, Owen treated them with respect as well as love, listening to their opinions and encouraging their participation in the conversation. After the meal, Samuel and Elizabeth eagerly offered to show Kate around the ranch. Owen accompanied them, occasionally adding details about the operation as they toured the barns, corrals, and gardens. The Running D employed 8 full-time hands, ran over 500 head of cattle, and bred some of the finest quarter horses in the territory. "Uncle Owen's the best horse trainer for miles," Samuel boasted as they watched a cowboy working with a young colt in the corral. "He can gentle even the wildest Mustang." "Is that so?" Kate asked, glancing at Owen, who looked somewhat embarrassed by the praise. "I have a way with the difficult ones," he admitted. "Always preferred a gentle approach to breaking a horse's spirit." The words revealed much about the man, Kate thought. A man who could be gentle in a land where harshness was often the quickest solution was rare indeed. As the tour concluded, Elizabeth tugged at Kate's hand. "Come see my special place," she insisted, leading Kate toward a small, fenced garden behind the house. Here, protected from livestock and wildlife, grew a profusion of wildflowers, columbines, penstemons, and other native blooms Kate couldn't name. "Mama started this," Elizabeth explained, her small face solemn. "Uncle Owen helps me keep it growing for her." Kate knelt beside the child. "It's absolutely beautiful, Elizabeth. Your mother would be very proud." The little girl nodded, then brightened. "Uncle Owen said we could pick some for you to take home." Kate looked up to find Owen watching them, his expression tender. Their eyes met over Elizabeth's head, and Kate felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. "That would be lovely," she said softly, not breaking the gaze. Later, as the afternoon shadows began to lengthen, Owen suggested that Samuel take Elizabeth to help Mrs. Wilkins collect eggs from the hen house. Once the children were out of earshot, he turned to Kate. "Would you care to walk a bit? There's a nice view from the ridge." Kate nodded, aware that being alone with him was perhaps not entirely proper, but unwilling to deny herself his company. They strolled in comfortable silence until they reached a rocky outcropping overlooking the ranch. Below, the buildings looked like a child's toys set against the vast landscape. The setting sun painted the scene in gold and amber, taking Kate's breath away. "I can see why you love it here," she said at last. Owen nodded, his gaze sweeping the vista. "Took me a while to learn to see the beauty. When James and I first arrived, all I saw was the work, the fences that needed building, the land that needed clearing." He glanced at her. It was Sarah who taught me to stop and look at the sunset, to appreciate what we were building, not just how much was left to do. She sounds like a remarkable woman. She was. His voice was thick with memory. She gave James those two amazing children, kept our spirits up during the hard times. When she got sick, he trailed off, shaking his head. Sorry, didn't bring you up here to talk about sad things. Kate placed a gentle hand on his arm. Don't apologize, they're your family. Their stories are part of who you are. Owen's eyes softened as he looked down at her. You know, when the town council said they'd hired an educated Eastern woman as the new teacher, I had my doubts. Figured you'd be some prim spinster who'd take one look at our rough ways and run back east on the next train. Kate laughed. And what do you think now? I think Williams got mighty lucky. His voice deepened. And so did I. The intensity in his gaze made Kate's heart race. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her, there on the ridge with the sun setting behind them. But Owen was too much of a gentleman. Instead, he simply offered his arm. We should head back. The children will be wondering where we've gone. Kate took his arm, and they walked back to the house in a silence charged with possibilities. As they neared the house, Owen spoke again. I'd like to call on you properly, Kate, if you'd permit it. The formal request, so earnestly delivered, touched Kate deeply. I'd like that very much, Owen. His smile was brilliant in the fading light. Good. That's real good. The ride back to town was filled with Elizabeth's chatter and Samuel's more reserved observations about the day. When they reached Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, Owen insisted on helping Kate down from the wagon. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice low as the children argued good-naturedly about whose turn it was to drive home. It meant a lot to the children. And to you? Kate asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Owen's eyes crinkled. Especially to me. Over the weeks that followed, Owen became a regular caller at Mrs. Henderson's parlor on Wednesday evenings and Sunday afternoons when Kate was free to receive visitors. The town noticed. Of course, it was impossible not to in a place the size of Williams, but the general reaction was approving. Owen Daniels was respected in the community, and Kate had quickly endeared herself to the townspeople through her dedication to their children's education. Autumn arrived, painting the landscape with fiery hues that rivaled the sunsets. Kate's school continued to flourish, with 3 more children joining as word spread of the quality of instruction available. Samuel was now reading at a level 3 years beyond his age, and Elizabeth had blossomed into one of the most enthusiastic students in the classroom. One crisp October afternoon, as Kate was cleaning the blackboard after dismissing her pupils, the schoolhouse door opened to reveal Owen. This wasn't unusual. He often came to walk her home after school, but today he seemed unusually serious. Is something wrong? Kate asked, immediately concerned. Are the children all right? They're fine, Owen assured her. Mrs. Wilkins took them to town for supplies. He removed his hat, twisting it in his hands in a gesture Kate had come to recognize as a sign of nervousness. I needed to speak with you alone. Kate set down the chalk, her pulse quickening. What is it? Owen took a deep breath. I've received a letter from the territorial governor. He's appointing me to a commission on land rights and water usage. It's an honor, but it means I'll need to travel to Phoenix for at least 2 weeks. That is an honor, Kate said, genuinely pleased for him while also feeling a surprising pang at the thought of his absence. When do you leave? Next Monday. Owen stepped closer. The thing is, Kate, I can't take the children with me. Phoenix is no place for them right now. There's a fever going around, and the accommodations would be poor. Mrs. Wilkins will look after them, surely? Owen nodded. She will, but... He hesitated, then plunged ahead. The children have come to care for you deeply. They trust you. If anything were to happen while I'm gone, I'd feel better knowing you were there for them. Kate's heart swelled at his trust in her. Of course I'll look out for them, Owen. You don't even need to ask. Relief softened his features. Thank you. He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers entwining with hers. There's something else, Kate, something I've been meaning to tell you. The seriousness in his eyes made Kate's breath catch. Yes. These past few months getting to know you. Owen's voice was husky with emotion. You've come to mean a great deal to me, more than I thought possible after everything. I don't want to leave without telling you that. Kate felt warmth spread through her chest. You mean a great deal to me too, Owen. His grip on her hand tightened. When I return from Phoenix, I'd like to speak with you about our future, if you'll allow it. The implication of his words was clear, and Kate felt a surge of joy so intense it almost overwhelmed her. I would like that very much. Owen's smile was radiant. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned in and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss so tender it brought tears to her eyes. It was brief, respectful, but filled with promise. 2 weeks, he murmured as he drew back. It's going to feel like an eternity. Kate returned to her boarding house that evening in a daze of happiness. Owen's kiss, his words about their future, they confirmed what her heart had known for weeks. She was falling in love with the rugged rancher, who showed such tenderness toward his orphaned niece and nephew, who worked with quiet determination to build something lasting in this wild territory. The following Monday, Owen departed for Phoenix. Before leaving, he brought Samuel and Elizabeth to the schoolhouse early, pulling Kate aside while the children arranged their books at their desks. Mrs. Wilkins knows to send for you if there's any trouble, he said quietly. And Johnson, my foreman, will check on things daily. We'll be fine, Kate assured him. Focus on your commission work. It's important for the territory's future. Owen nodded, his blue eyes serious. I've left something for you with Mrs. Henderson. Don't open it until I'm gone, all right? Curiosity piqued, Kate agreed. With a final lingering look, Owen kissed her quickly on the cheek, said goodbye to the children, and was gone. That evening, Mrs. Henderson handed Kate a small package wrapped in brown paper. Mr. Daniels left this for you, she said, her eyes twinkling with suppressed curiosity. Alone in her room, Kate carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a small leather-bound book of poetry Tennyson's works and a letter sealed with wax. Breaking the seal, she unfolded the paper to find Owen's surprisingly elegant handwriting. Dear Kate, it began. Words don't come easily to me, but I want you to know what's in my heart as I leave. Before you came to Williams, I thought my life was set raising the children, running the ranch, honoring my brother's memory. I never expected to find someone who would make me dream of a different future, a fuller one. You've done that. Your kindness, your intelligence, your beautiful spirit have awakened something in me I thought was gone forever. These 2 weeks will be the longest of my life, but I'll carry the memory of your smile with me, until I return, Owen. Kate pressed the letter to her heart, tears of happiness blurring her vision. The simple, heartfelt words meant more to her than the most flowery declarations. The days passed in a blur of teaching, visits to check on the children at the ranch, and quiet evenings reading Owen's letter again and again. Samuel and Elizabeth missed their uncle terribly, but they took pride in helping Mrs. Wilkins and the ranch hands with daily chores. Kate found herself spending more time at the Running D than she'd planned, often staying for supper and helping Elizabeth with her reading afterward. A week into Owen's absence, disaster struck. Kate was in the middle of a geography lesson when the schoolhouse door burst open to reveal Johnson, the running DTKS foreman, his face grave. Miss Dawson, he said, removing his hat. Sorry to interrupt, but there's trouble at the ranch, fire in the north pasture. Winds driving it toward the house. Kate's heart leaped into her throat as Samuel and Elizabeth rushed to the foreman, their faces white with fear. The house, Mrs. Wilkins? Kate asked, already reaching for her shawl. She's fine, organizing the bucket brigade, but we need every hand. The children will come with me, Kate decided instantly. Turning to her other pupils, she said, Class is dismissed. Older students, please see the younger ones safely home, then tell your parents about the fire. Any help would be appreciated. Within minutes, Kate, Samuel, and Elizabeth were in Johnson's wagon, racing toward the ranch. Even from a distance, they could see the dark smoke billowing into the clear blue sky. As they drew closer, The acrid smell filled their nostrils, and they could hear shouts and the frantic lowing of frightened cattle. The scene at the ranch was one of controlled chaos. Ranch hands and neighbors formed a bucket line from the well to the edge of the fire, which had already consumed a section of fence and was creeping inexorably toward the barn. Mrs. Wilkins directed operations from the porch, her normally neat gray hair escaping its pins. "Keep the children back," she shouted when she spotted Kate. "We've got most of the horses out, but the wind's shifting." Kate guided Samuel and Elizabeth to what she hoped was a safe distance, but Samuel pulled away. "I can help. I'm not a baby." "Samuel," Kate began, but Mrs. Wilkins interrupted. "Let him help with the smaller buckets, Miss Dawson. We need every hand. You and Elizabeth can wet blankets to beat out the smaller flames." For the next 2 hours, Kate worked alongside the ranch's people, her arms aching, her lungs burning from the smoke. Samuel proved surprisingly strong and endlessly determined, while Elizabeth shuttled messages between the various firefighting groups with courage beyond her years. As the sun began to set, they finally gained the upper hand. The fire had been contained to the north pasture, with minimal damage to the ranch buildings themselves. Exhausted, covered in soot, Kate sat on the porch steps with an equally filthy Elizabeth leaning against her shoulder. Samuel sprawled at their feet, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. "You all did real good," Johnson said, handing Kate a cup of water. "If that fire had reached the barn or the house." "Uncle Owen would have been so sad," Elizabeth murmured sleepily. "But it didn't," Kate reassured her, smoothing the girl's tangled hair. "Everyone worked together, and we saved it." "Just like a family," Samuel added, and the simple observation brought tears to Kate's smoke-irritated eyes. That night, Kate stayed at the ranch, sleeping in the guest room while the children, too wound up to be separated, camped on a pallet in the sitting room under Mrs. Wilkins' watchful eye. As Kate drifted off to sleep, she realized that somewhere along the way, the running D had begun to feel like home. The next morning, Johnson sent a rider to Phoenix with news of the fire. 3 days later, a dusty, travel-worn Owen Daniels rode into the ranch yard at a gallop, having clearly pushed his horse to the limits to return as quickly as possible. Kate was helping Elizabeth hang laundry when they heard the pounding hooves. The little girl dropped the wet shirt she was holding and ran toward the rider, shrieking, "Uncle Owen! Uncle Owen!" Owen swung down from his horse in one fluid motion, catching Elizabeth as she launched herself at him. Samuel raced around the corner of the house, adding his voice to his sister's excited welcome. Over their heads, Owen's eyes found Kate, and the intensity of emotion in them made her breath catch. Later, after the initial excitement had died down and Owen had been reassured that everyone was safe and the damage minimal, he found Kate alone in the kitchen, preparing vegetables for supper. "Johnson told me what you did," he said without preamble. "How you organized the children, worked the fire line, stayed with them afterward." Kate shrugged, suddenly shy under his intense gaze. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Owen said firmly, stepping closer. "Not anyone." "Kate, when I got that message about the fire, all I could think was, what if I lose them? What if I lose you, before I've had the chance to tell you?" He broke off, struggling for words, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. Taking her hand in his, he pressed a simple gold ring into her palm. "I bought this in Phoenix," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Had planned a proper proposal when I got back, but life's too uncertain to wait for the right moment. I love you, Katherine Dawson. The children love you. Will you marry me? Be a mother to Samuel and Elizabeth? Make the running D your home." Kate looked down at the ring glinting in her palm, then up at Owen's face, dear, beloved, anxious. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." Joy transformed his features. Gently, reverently, he took the ring and slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had always been meant to be there. Then he gathered her into his arms and kissed her with all the pent-up emotion of their separation, and Kate knew with absolute certainty that she had found where she belonged. News of their engagement spread quickly through Williams. Most reactions were positive misses. Henderson wept happy tears, claiming she'd known all along they were perfect for each other. Kate's students presented her with a handmade card signed by them all, though some of the older boys feigned disgust at the romantic development. The town council, however, presented an unexpected obstacle. At their monthly meeting, they voted to enforce the clause in Kate's contract that stipulated she could not be a married woman while employed as the schoolteacher. "It's nothing personal, Miss Dawson," Mayor Patterson explained apologetically when he delivered the news. "It's just always been our policy. A married woman's place is in her home, tending to her husband and children." Kate was stunned. "But what about the school? The children need consistency in their education." "We've already telegraphed for a replacement," the mayor informed her. "A Miss Abigail Fleming from Minnesota. She comes highly recommended." Owen was furious when Kate told him. "This is ridiculous. You're the best teacher this town has ever had. I'll speak to Patterson, make him see reason." Kate placed a calming hand on his arm. "It won't help, Owen. The policy is clear, and in their minds, they're being perfectly reasonable." She sighed. "I knew this was a possibility when I signed the contract. I just didn't expect to fall in love." Owen's anger softened at her words. "We could postpone the wedding," he suggested, though his tone made it clear how little he liked the idea. "Wait until the school year ends," Kate shook her head. "No, I don't want to wait," she smiled up at him. "Besides, I have another idea." The idea came to fruition 2 weeks later, after several private meetings with Reverend Porter and some of the more progressive-minded women in town. On a beautiful November afternoon, with the entire community gathered in the schoolhouse, Kate stood before them not as their teacher, but as a passionate advocate. "Education isn't just a luxury," she told the assembled townspeople. "It's a necessity, especially here in the territories where our children will build the future of Arizona. Our school has grown, and one teacher can no longer effectively manage all the students and grade levels." She gestured to a young woman seated in the front row. "Miss Fleming has arrived to take my position, and she will be an excellent teacher for the younger children. But I am proposing the establishment of an advanced class for older students, those preparing for further education or careers requiring more specialized knowledge." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Kate continued. "Reverend Porter has generously offered the use of the church meeting room 3 days a week for these classes. They would be private lessons, not subject to the town council's authority." She paused, looking directly at the council members. "And they could be taught by a married woman." The debate that followed was heated but ultimately productive. Many parents, particularly those with older children, supported the idea immediately. Others were hesitant, concerned about dividing the school's resources. The council members were clearly uncomfortable with the challenge to their authority, but could find no legal reason to object to private lessons conducted outside school hours. In the end, it was Samuel who tipped the scales. Standing up before the entire town, the normally reserved boy spoke with surprising eloquence about how Miss Dawson had awakened his love of learning, how she'd helped him understand mathematics when he'd thought it beyond his grasp, how she'd introduced him to the writings of great thinkers that made him want to become a lawyer someday. "If she can't be our regular teacher anymore because she's marrying my uncle, then let her teach those of us who want to learn more," he concluded, his young voice steady despite the blush creeping up his neck. "Don't punish us because she fell in love." A moment of silence followed his speech, broken by Elizabeth's piping voice. "Miss Dawson is going to be our mother, but she can be a teacher too. My real mama always said women can do lots of things at once." Laughter rippled through the crowd, releasing the tension. Even Mayor Patterson's stern expression softened. "It seems we have a compromise," Reverend Porter announced. "Miss Fleming will take over the main school, while Mrs. Daniels, as she will soon be, will offer advanced instruction to interested pupils 3 afternoons a week." Kate caught Owen's eye across the room. His expression of pride and love warmed her to her toes. They had found a way forward that honored both her passion for teaching and their desire to build a life together. The wedding was set for the last Saturday in November, a date chosen to accommodate the ranching schedule and to allow time for Kate's parents to travel from St. Louis if they chose to attend. Kate had written them a heartfelt letter announcing her engagement, describing Owen, the children, and the life they were building. She'd included a formal invitation, but held little hope that her father would approve enough to make the journey. As the day approached, preparations consumed the running D. Mrs. Wilkins supervised a thorough cleaning of the house, while Owen and the hands built additional tables for the wedding feast. The ceremony would be held at the small church in Williams, but the celebration afterward would take place at the ranch, allowing for a larger gathering than the church could accommodate. 2 days before the wedding, Kate was overseeing the arrangement of wildflowers Elizabeth had insisted on gathering for decorations when she heard the sound of a wagon approaching. Assuming it was supplies from town, she continued her work until Elizabeth came running in, her eyes wide. "Kate, there's a fancy lady and gentleman asking for you. The lady has your eyes." Kate's heart leaped. Could it be? She hurried outside to find a well-appointed rented carriage in the yard, and standing beside it, looking simultaneously travel-weary and impeccably dressed, were her parents. "Mother." "Father," Kate whispered, hardly believing her eyes. Margaret Dawson stepped forward first, arms outstretched. "Katherine, my darling girl." The embrace was fierce, both women clinging to each other after nearly a year's separation. When they finally pulled apart, Kate turned to her father, who stood rigidly beside the carriage, his academic's face set in lines of careful neutrality. "Father," Kate said, suddenly uncertain, "I'm so glad you came." Professor James Dawson studied his daughter's face for a long moment. "You look well," he said at last. "Healthy, happy." "I am happy," Kate confirmed, "happier than I've ever been." Something in her father's expression shifted. "Then I suppose I should meet the man responsible for that happiness." Before Kate could respond, Owen appeared from the barn, having been alerted to the visitor's arrival. He'd clearly made an effort to clean up, though his work clothes were still dusty from the morning's ranch chores. Elizabeth clung to his hand, while Samuel hung back, watching the scene with cautious eyes. "Mr. and Mrs. Dawson," Owen said, stepping forward with his hand extended. "Welcome to the Running D. I'm Owen Daniels." Kate held her breath as her father regarded Owen's outstretched hand. After a moment that seemed to stretch endlessly, Professor Dawson reached out and clasped it firmly. "Professor James Dawson," he said, "I understand you intend to marry my daughter." Owen met the older man's gaze steadily. "Yes, sir, I do." "With your blessing, I hope, but with or without it, Katherine has agreed to be my wife." A surprised laugh escaped Margaret Dawson. "Well, direct and honest at least." Professor Dawson's lips twitched slightly. "Indeed." He glanced around the ranch, taking in the well-maintained buildings, the prosperous operation. "Perhaps you might show me around your property, Mr. Daniels. I'd like to see what kind of life you're offering my daughter." "I'd be happy to, sir." Owen looked at Kate. "Will you be all right getting your parents settled?" Kate nodded, understanding the importance of this private conversation between the two men. As Owen led her father toward the barns, she turned to her mother. "Come inside, Mother. Mrs. Wilkins has fresh lemonade, and I want you to meet Samuel and Elizabeth properly." As they walked toward the house, Margaret took her daughter's arm. "Your father wouldn't admit it, but he's been worried sick about you. When your letter came, with its talk of ranchers and orphaned children and frontier schools, I thought he might have an apoplexy on the spot." Kate bit her lip. "I'm sorry to have worried you both." "Don't be," her mother said firmly. "Sometimes a parent's greatest challenge is accepting that their child must find their own path." She squeezed Kate's arm. "And it seems you've found yours, my dear. He's quite handsome, your Mr. Daniels." Kate laughed. "Yes, he is, but it's his heart that I love most." Margaret's eyes grew misty. "That's as it should be." By the time Owen and Professor Dawson returned from their tour of the ranch, something had shifted between them. Kate's father still maintained his academics reserve, but there was a new respect in the way he addressed Owen, and he accepted a glass of whiskey from his future son-in-law with genuine appreciation. Later that evening, as her parents rested from their journey in the guest room, Kate found Owen on the porch, gazing at the star-filled Arizona sky. "What did you say to my father?" she asked, slipping her hand into his. "He seems almost reconciled." Owen smiled down at her. "I simply showed him the truth of who I am and what I've built here. Told him about my brother, about taking on the children, about my plans for the future." His expression grew serious, "And I promised him I'd cherish and protect his daughter for as long as I live. And he believed you." "He did when I showed him the schoolroom I've been building behind the house." Owen's eyes twinkled. "Seems he approves of a man who values education enough to create a special place for his teacher wife to continue her work." Kate's eyes widened. "A schoolroom." "Owen, when did you?" "It was meant to be a wedding surprise," he admitted. "Johnson and the Hands have been working on it whenever you were in town. It's nothing fancy yet, just the structure and some basic furnishings, but I thought you could use it for your advanced students." Saves them traveling all the way to town. Tears sprang to Kate's eyes. "You wonderful, wonderful man," she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. "How did I get so lucky?" Owen turned his head to press a kiss to her palm. "I'm the lucky one, Kate Dawson. And in 2 days, I'll be the luckiest man in the Arizona territory when you become Kate Daniels." The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the November air crisp but not uncomfortably cold. Kate dressed in her mother's wedding gown, altered slightly by Mrs. Wilkins' skilled hands to suit the more practical frontier style. Margaret arranged Kate's dark hair with orange blossoms sent all the way from California for the occasion, while Elizabeth watched in wide-eyed admiration. "You look like an angel," the little girl breathed. "Uncle Owen is going to fall right over when he sees you." Kate laughed, though her stomach fluttered with nervous excitement. "I certainly hope not. It would be a shame to have to postpone the wedding because the groom fainted." The small church in Williams was filled to capacity, decorated with pine boughs and late-blooming wildflowers. Kate's students had created paper chains that festooned the simple wooden beams, adding a touch of festive color to the austere space. Owen waited at the altar with Samuel proudly serving as his best man, the boy's face solemn with the importance of his role. When the door opened and Kate appeared on her father's arm, a collective murmur of appreciation swept through the congregation, but Kate saw only Owen. His eyes, that clear Arizona blue, widened at the sight of her. The love and wonder in his expression made her feel more beautiful than any mirror ever could. Professor Dawson placed his daughter's hand in Owen's with a dignified nod that conveyed both blessing and warning. As they turned to face Reverend Porter, Owen leaned down to whisper, "You take my breath away, Kate Dawson." The ceremony was simple but deeply meaningful. They exchanged traditional vows, their voices steady and sure. When Owen slipped the gold ring onto Kate's finger, the same one he'd given her during his impromptu proposal, his hands were gentle but strong, just like the man himself. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Porter declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Owen's kiss was tender, mindful of their audience, but filled with promise. As they turned to face their friends and family, Elizabeth darted forward to wrap her arms around both their waists. "Are you our mother now?" she asked Kate, her small face upturned and hopeful. Kate knelt, bringing herself to the child's level. "I am if you want me to be, sweetheart." Samuel stepped forward then, his young face working with emotion. "Our mama would have liked you," he said quietly. "She always told us to be kind and smart. You're both." Owen rested his hands on his nephew's, now his son's shoulders. "Your mama would be happy knowing Kate's helping me raise you both," he agreed, his voice rough with emotion. As they walked down the aisle together, not just bride and groom, but instantly A family of 4 Kate felt her heart might burst with happiness. The celebration at the Running D lasted well into the night. Tables groaned with food contributed by neighbors and friends. A fiddle player from town provided music for dancing, and the ranch yard blazed with lanterns against the gathering darkness. Kate danced with her new husband, with her father, with Samuel, who stepped on her toes but apologized profusely, and even with Mayor Patterson, who grudgingly admitted that her compromise solution for the school had been quite cleverly conceived. As the evening wore on, Kate slipped away from the festivities to catch her breath, finding a quiet spot on the porch swing. She was soon joined by her mother, who settled beside her with a contented sigh. "Happy, my dear?" Margaret asked, though the question was clearly rhetorical. "Completely," Kate confirmed, gazing out at the celebration. Owen was swinging Elizabeth in a circle, the child's laughter carrying across the yard. Samuel was deep in conversation with Kate's father, the boy's expression earnest as the professor explained something with animated gestures. "Your father and I worried," Margaret admitted, following Kate's gaze. "When you left St. Louis, we feared you were running away from something, not toward something better." Kate squeezed her mother's hand. "I didn't know what I was looking for until I found it," she said simply. "But I think I was always meant to be here." The next morning, after Kate's parents had departed for their return journey to St. Louis, with promises to visit again in the spring, the new family of 4 sat around the breakfast table, adjusting to their new reality. "So what do we call you now?" Samuel asked, pushing his eggs around his plate. "Mrs. Daniels seems too formal, but you're not comfortable calling me mother yet," Kate finished gently. "That's all right, Samuel. You can call me Kate for as long as you need to." "But you are our mother now," Elizabeth insisted. "Uncle Owen, Papa said so." Owen smiled at his niece's quick adaptation. "That's right, little one. Kate is your mother in every way that matters." He looked at his wife, his expression tender. "Just as you two are our children now, in every way that matters." Under the table, Kate reached for Owen's hand, finding it waiting for hers. In that moment, surrounded by morning sunlight and the people she loved most in the world, Kate knew that her adventure had only just begun. 5 years later, Mama, come quick. "Papa's back, and he's brought something." Kate looked up from where she was correcting essays at her desk in the schoolroom that had grown from Owen's wedding surprise into a proper small schoolhouse. Through the open window, she could see Elizabeth, now 11 and as spirited as ever, running across the yard, her braids flying behind her. "I'll be right there," Kate called back, carefully setting aside young Thomas Porter's rather creative essay on the founding of Arizona Territory. She rubbed the small of her back as she stood, the growing weight of her pregnancy making itself known after a morning of sitting. Outside, the spring sunshine warmed her face as she made her way toward the main house. The Running D had prospered over the past 5 years, expanding its operations and its reputation. Owen had added 2,000 acres to their holdings, built a larger barn, and increased their breeding program to include some of the finest horses in the Southwest. Kate's advanced classes had grown to include students from as far as Flagstaff, with several of her former pupils now attending universities back east. As she rounded the corner of the house, Kate saw Owen dismounting from his horse, a large crate secured to his pack mule. Samuel, now 13 and nearly as tall as Kate herself, was already helping to untie it, his movements showing the same quiet competence that characterized his uncle-turned-father. "What have you brought us this time?" Kate called, smiling as Owen looked up, and his face lit with pleasure at the sight of her. 5 years of marriage had only deepened their connection. The passion that had first drawn them together had matured into a love that sustained them through the inevitable challenges of frontier life drought years, cattle disease, the difficult birth of their son James 3 years earlier, and now the anticipation of their second child, due in the height of summer. "Something special," Owen replied, crossing to her and placing a gentle kiss on her lips. His hand came to rest on the swell of her belly, his expression softening as he felt the baby move beneath his palm. "How are you feeling today?" "Wonderful," Kate assured him. "The morning sickness has finally passed, and your son is eager to see what's in that crate." 3-year-old James had toddled up behind her, his small face curious as he peered around her skirts at the mysterious box his father had brought. "Present?" he asked hopefully. Owen laughed, scooping the boy up with one strong arm. "Not a present exactly, son, something for all of us." He looked at the gathered family. The railroads brought something special from back east, had to pick it up in person, sign for it and everything. Samuel and Johnson, the faithful foreman who had become almost family over the years, worked together to pry open the crate. Inside, nestled in protective straw, was a gleaming object that made Kate gasp. "Owen, is that what I think it is?" Her husband's smile was boyishly proud. "A proper piano." Had it ordered all the way from Boston. Mrs. Porter's been teaching Elizabeth and James their notes on that old squeeze box of hers, but I figured our children deserve the real thing. Elizabeth was literally jumping with excitement. "A real piano, in our house. Oh, Papa." Even Samuel, who had lately adopted a teenager's studied nonchalance about most things, looked impressed. "That must have cost a fortune to ship out here." "Worth every penny," Owen declared. "Johnson, let's get some of the boys to help carry it inside. Carefully now." As the men maneuvered the piano into the house, finding a place of honor for it in the parlor, Kate stood back with tears in her eyes. When Owen returned to her side, she leaned into him, too moved for words. "Happy?" he asked softly, his arm around her waist. "Beyond words," she whispered. "When I came west, I thought I was leaving civilization behind. Music, art, literature, I was prepared to sacrifice those things for adventure. But you've given me everything, Owen. Adventure and culture, love and family, purpose and joy." Owen's eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled down at her. "We built it together, Kate, just like we'll keep building it for our children and their children after them." He gestured toward the house, where Elizabeth was already seated at the piano, tentatively picking out a tune while Samuel pretended not to be interested, but stood close by. "This is just the beginning." That evening, after the children were in bed, Kate and Owen sat on the porch swing, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. The same stars that had witnessed their first kiss still shone overhead, the same mountains stood silhouetted against the darkened sky. But the woman who had once been Katherine Dawson, schoolteacher, was now Kate Daniels, wife, mother, educator, and cornerstone of a thriving family. "Do you ever miss it?" Owen asked suddenly. "The life you might have had back east, the society, the conveniences." Kate considered the question seriously, as she did all things. "Sometimes I miss certain aspects," she admitted. "The libraries, the concerts, the ease of certain daily tasks, but miss the life itself." She shook her head. "Never, not for a moment." She took his hand, guiding it to the spot where their unborn child kicked energetically. "This is where I was meant to be, Owen, with you, with our family, building something that will last long after we're gone." Owen's expression was tender in the moonlight as he leaned in to kiss her, a kiss as full of promise as the one they'd shared at the altar 5 years before. "I loved you the moment you looked up from your desk that first day, with the sunset behind you," he murmured against her lips. "Schoolteacher at Sundown. That's how I'll always remember the moment my life changed forever." Kate smiled against his mouth. "And I loved you when you knelt to show Elizabeth how to form her letters, this big, strong cowboy being so gentle with a child's small hands." They sat together in companionable silence, watching the moon rise over the land they both loved. In the distance, a coyote called, answered by another wild voices in harmony, much like the two hearts beating side by side on the porch of the home they had built together. The running D would continue to grow and change in the years to come. Samuel would eventually attend law school in San Francisco, returning to help shape the legal landscape of the Arizona Territory as it moved toward statehood. Elizabeth would become a teacher like her adopted mother. with a special gift for music that would bring joy to generations of students. James and his younger sister Margaret, born that summer, would grow up knowing both the traditions of the East and the freedom of the West, inheriting their father's love of the land and their mother's passion for knowledge. But through all the changes, the core would remain the same, a family forged by love in the wild Arizona territory, where once, at Sundown, a schoolteacher and a cowboy began a journey that would span generations. As the night deepened around them, Owen rose and offered his hand to his wife. "Time for bed, Mrs. Daniels." Kate took his hand as she had that first day when he helped her from the wagon, as she had at the altar, as she would for all the days to come. "Lead the way, Mr. Daniels." Together, they walked into their home, closing the door on the wild night, secure in the love they had built, a love as vast as the western sky, as enduring as the mountains, and as life-giving as the rains that turned the desert to gold each spring.